Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is October 4th, on a Sunday, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you all enjoyed your weekend. I ended up taking Friday off. My apologies. I did not announce that last week. Sort of impromptu. Wasn't the plan, but that's what happened. So that was the jobs report for the month of September. And so that's what I want to take the time to discuss today. So the title of today's podcast, Last Jobs Report Before Election. A little bit of market performance. I'm doing this, of course, in the evening, so we have some futures market trading going on right now. We have, unfortunately, President Donald Trump at Walter Reed Hospital, contracting, of course, you're all aware, COVID-19. This is not a time for anybody to say, I told you so, I told you so. Even though a lot of this has been mismanaged from a number of people, from a number of sources, including the president himself, this is not a time for I told you so. This is a serious virus. It is killing people, especially those with comorbidities. President Trump is older. He's 74 years old. He is overweight. Those are some issues. So this is something that is to be taken very seriously. And of course, the President of the United States, he kind of has an important job. He is the executive branch of our government. So I wish the President would have taken this more seriously. They're discussing perhaps it was when he was announcing his Supreme Court justice nomination, Amy Coney Barrett, and everybody's out there in the Rose Garden, and not too many people are wearing masks, and they're close, and they're not social distancing, yada, yada, yada. And a handful of people from that party, from that announcement at the White House, have now contracted COVID-19. Now, we all hope for their speedy recovery. This is above and beyond politics, I hope. But this is a very toxic environment. A lot of people are going to say, well, how nice would the president be if Joe Biden had contracted COVID-19? Would he be as nice? Would he have done sort of the class act move that Joe Biden, his campaign, did and took down all of their negative ads? Because to my knowledge, at the time of this podcast, and I could be corrected, but from my knowledge, again, Joe Biden has taken down his negative ads attacking the president, but the Trump campaign has not taken down their negative ads. Well, again, that's not too surprising. But we hope for a speedy recovery of everybody who has it, and so many other diseases that are out there. But to the president, to the first lady, and the others who were at that announcement who now have COVID-19. So he's at Walter Reed, tweeting some things out, going on a little drive today because some of his supporters are outside waving flags, cheering him on, this, that, and the other, and that's perfectly fine. The president, however, driving around, I don't think that was the best move. I really don't. I understand he might want to show some support for his supporters, a show of strength. It's okay to be sick, Mr. President, and it's okay to get better. You don't want to overexert yourself. I mean, this is a disease that can cause fatigue, in some cases serious fatigue. If you're capable of working within the hospital, then conduct your work inside the hospital. There's no need to put on a show, to get your photo op. This is not the time or place. Rest up, get better, get back to the White House. Because the communication on this over the weekend is sort of par for the course with this administration, and it is not good. It is not good. They should be very open and very transparent with what is going on. The American people deserve to have this information. We really do. But it's always, well, the doctors are going to come out and say it this way, and then somebody's going to be off the record and say it that way, and it's back and forth. We talked about this so many times before and did a podcast on it recently with the social disorder, talking about social media. People are coming out of the woodwork with various conspiracy theories. What the real state of the president is, this, that, and the other. That can all be put down, or at least to a better degree than what's circulating out there right now. If the White House and the communications team was much more transparent about what was going on. Period. End of story. This is the official communication from the White House. This is the real state of affairs with respect to the president's current state of health. If it's good, fantastic. If it's not, all right, well, what's the scenario? What's the diagnosis? What's being done? What can we expect? We don't need all the cheerleading. We don't need all of the misdirection. We don't need one person saying this and then having to come out and say, oh, well, we meant to say this, and then somebody else off the record saying that. We don't need it. That's part of the problem here. Causing the confusion, causing the division, because it puts a lot of things into flux, into doubt. We don't need it. We had enough problems as it is. So, we'll see what happens, but they're already stating that the president might be back at the White House tomorrow. I think that's a mistake. I think he should be there at Walter Reed for probably a few more days at a minimum. Because he's on, at least according to their statements, he is on some serious medication. Some of it is experimental. So why move back and forth? But that's what I guess is going to take place. On the market performance front, we have the dollar index right now down slightly, trading at 93.73. Dow futures are up about 0.6%. The S&P 500 is also up about 0.7%. The NASDAQ 100 is flirting with a gain of about 1% at the time of this podcast. Japanese cash trade is also up 1.2%. A lot of this is, of course, off of the back of the news that the president seems to be doing better and might be going back to the White House, yada, yada, yada. Cash trade in Australia is up 2.6%. That is a combination of the news I just mentioned, plus it appears that the land down under is going to be putting forth some more spending. So I guess the Reserve Bank of Australia is going to turn on their Banana Republic printing press as well. Phenomenal. WTI is up about 2.5%, trading at $37.95. Brent is at $40.09. Natural gas at $2.54. Gold is down slightly, trading at $1,892 an ounce. That is spot gold. And spot silver is up about a dime, trading at $23.80. So that's some of the market noise there. It will be interesting to see how the president plays this if he gets better, and we're hoping that he does. Is he going to be a huge cheerleader for Johnson & Johnson and Moderna when he comes out, and Gilead Sciences, and any of them? And is that really the job of the president, to be touting certain products of certain companies? I don't think that it is, but we are a fascist state in this country from the standpoint that that is a corporate state, the merger of big government with big business. It's just not how it's supposed to be. Again, picking winners and losers. So that could become very interesting. The other thing I want to note before we get to the jobs report, too, the president did put out another video on Twitter thanking his supporters and all of the well-wishers and the prayers that he's been receiving and this, that, and the other. All fine. But he made a comment during this video that I thought was interesting, that he said he has learned a lot about COVID-19. What does that mean? And he says, well, it's very interesting, and I'll let you know later on. Well, why not let us know now, Mr. President? If there's something that's very interesting, that could be very vital, that the American people should know about, maybe you have an obligation and a duty to tell us now. Because people take you for your word. People act on what you say and what you do. It's incumbent upon you to share that information if it's that interesting, and it could save some people's lives if they change their behavior, because a lot of people don't want to listen because they hear what they want to hear, and Donald Trump speaks out of both sides of his mouth. So they hear what they want to hear, and then they do what they think is right. And that may not be the case. So this is the reality TV president giving you the TV tease. It's interesting. I'll tell you later. Stay tuned, folks, to next week. Come back after the commercial break. We deserve better than this. I do not like it. And the president has nothing but resources at his fingertips, so I really don't know. He's saying, well, this isn't what you learn in the books. This is, street level, basically, is what he's saying. This is the street education, because I got it, so now I'm really learning about it. You could have learned about it probably from reading some books, but unfortunately the man just doesn't seem to read too much. But he has resources of people that do read the studies. But it's interesting. I guess he just wants us to stay tuned. So that's another critique that I have. All right, on to the jobs report. Again, this is the last jobs report before the election. We will, of course, continue to get initial jobless claims figures. And, of course, we talked about that on Thursday. Another 26.5 million are still receiving some form of unemployment insurance. But this is the official jobs report. Total non-farm payroll employment rose by 661,000 in the month of September, and the unemployment rate declined to 7.9%. These improvements in the labor market reflect the continued resumption of economic activity that had been curtailed due to the coronavirus pandemic and efforts to contain it. In September, notable job gains occurred in leisure and hospitality, in retail trade, in healthcare and social assistance, and in professional and business services. Employment in government declined over the month, mainly in state and local government education. First, to the household survey data. In September, the unemployment rate declined by 0.5 percentage points to 7.9%, and the number of unemployed persons fell by 1 million to 12.6 million. Both measures have declined for 5 consecutive months, but are higher than in February by 4.4 percentage points and 6.8 million, respectively. Among the major worker groups, the unemployment rates declined in September for adult men, 7.4%, adult women, 7.7%, whites at 7% even, and Asians at 8.9%. The jobless rates for teenagers are at 15.9%, blacks at 12.1%, and Hispanics at 10.3%. Among the unemployed, the number of persons on temporary layoff decreased by 1.5 million in September to 4.6 million. This measure is down considerably from the high of 18.1 million in April, but is 3.8 million higher than in the month of February. In September, the number of permanent job losers increased by 345,000 to 3.8. This measure has risen by 2.5 million since February. Allow me to repeat, because this is that key nugget that we're always looking for under the hood. In September, the number of permanent job losers increased by 345,000 to 3.8 million. This measure has risen by 2.5 million since February. This continues to go in the wrong direction. Now, this report is from the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is within the Department of Labor, the same Department of Labor that gives us the initial claims that we talk about on a weekly basis. All right, so again, there is a breakdown going on here, a lot of distortionary effects. This audience understands this. The number of unemployed job leavers rose by 212,000 to 801,000 in September. Job leavers are a person who quit or voluntarily left their previous job and immediately began looking for new employment. In September, the number of unemployed persons who were jobless less than 5 weeks increased by 271,000 to 2.6 million. The number of persons jobless 5 to 14 weeks decreased by 402,000 to 2.7 million, and the number of persons jobless 15 to 26 weeks fell by 1.6 million to 4.9 million. The number of long-term unemployed, those jobless for 27 weeks or more, increased by 781,000 to 2.4 million. So that is in agreement with what's going on with those permanent job losers. Those long-term unemployed are really feeling the pain right now. And unfortunately, this is likely going to get worse before it gets better, because all of the Nobody Cares Act and all of the Banana Republic printing press funny money that's circulating out there is just a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. This is just kicking the can down the road. The labor force participation rate decreased by 0.3 percentage points to 61.4% in September and is 2 percentage points lower than in February. Again, that is the labor force participation rate. The employment population ratio at 56.6% is changed little over the month, but is 4.5 percentage points lower than in February. In September, the number of persons employed part-time for economic reasons, sometimes referred to as involuntary part-time workers, declined by 1.3 million to 6.3 million, reflecting a decrease in the number of persons whose hours were cut due to slack work or business conditions. the number of involuntary part-time workers is 2 million higher than in the month of February. These individuals who would have preferred full-time employment were working part-time because their hours had been reduced or they were unable to find full-time jobs. The number of persons not in the labor force who currently want a job at 7.2 million changed little in the month of September. This measure is 2.3 million higher than in the month of February. These individuals were not counted as unemployed because they were not actively looking for work during the last 4 weeks or were unavailable to take a job. That's 7.2 million. All right. Not being counted. Among those not in the labor force who currently want a job, the number of persons marginally attached to the labor force at 1.9 million changed little in the month of September. These individuals were not in the labor force, wanted and were available for work, and had looked for a job sometime in the prior 12 months, but had not looked for work in the 4 weeks preceding the survey. The number of discouraged workers, a subset of the marginally attached, who believed that no jobs were available for them, was 581,000 in September, also little change from the previous month. These are those numbers underneath the hood. Again, we want to see these trending in a positive direction. They're either going in the wrong direction or they are little changed from the previous months. This is telling me that this is structural, which is what I have been stating for months, because this is structural. No amount of funny money is going to print our way out of this. Funny money is not a panacea. There is no free lunch. You can throw money into the system, but you can't print new jobs. Household survey supplemental data. In September, 22.7% of employed persons teleworked because of the coronavirus pandemic, down from 24.3% in August. These data refer to employed persons who teleworked or worked at home for pay at some point in the last 4 weeks, specifically because of the pandemic. In September, 19.4 million persons reported that they had been unable to work because their employer closed or lost business due to the pandemic. That is, they did not work at all, or they worked fewer hours at some point in the last 4 weeks due to the pandemic. Again, 19.4 million persons. This measure is down from 24.2 million in August. Among those who reported in September that they were unable to work because of pandemic-related closures or lost business, 10.3% received at least some pay from their employer for the hours not worked. About 4.5 million persons not in the labor force in September were prevented from looking for work due to the pandemic. This is down from 5.2 million in the month of August. To be counted as unemployed by definition, individuals must either be actively looking for work or on temporary layoff. Now on to the establishment survey data. Total non-farm payroll employment rose by 661,000 in September, following larger gains in the prior 4 months. In September, non-farm employment was below its February level by 10.7 million or 7%. Notable job gains occurred in leisure and hospitality, in retail trade, in healthcare and social assistance, and in professional and business services. Employment declined in government, mainly in state and local government education. Employment in leisure and hospitality increased by 318,000 in September, with almost 2/3 of the gain occurring in food services and drinking places, up 200,000. Despite job growth totaling 3.8 million over the last 5 months, employment in food services and drinking places is down by 2.3 million since February. Amusements, gambling, and recreation, up 69,000, and accommodation gaining 51,000, also added jobs in September. Retail trade added 142,000 jobs over the month, with gains widespread in the industry. Clothing and clothing accessory stores gaining 40,000 accounted for about 1/4 of the over-the-month change in retail trade. Notable employment increases also occurred in general merchandise stores gaining 20,000, motor vehicles and parts dealers gaining 16,000, and health and personal care stores gaining 16,000 as well. Employment in retail trade is 483,000 lower than in the month of February. Employment in healthcare and social assistance rose by 108,000 in September, but is down by 1 million since February. Healthcare added 53,000 jobs in September, with continued growth in offices of physicians gaining 18,000, home healthcare services gaining 16,000, and offices of other health practitioners gaining 14,000. Social assistance added 55,000 jobs, mostly in individual and family services, up 32,000, and in child daycare services, gaining 18,000. Professional and business services added 89,000 jobs in September. Employment increased in services to buildings and dwellings, up 22,000. Architectural and engineering services up 13,000, and computer system design and related services gaining 12,000. Despite gains of 910,000 since April, employment in professional and business services is 1.4 million lower than in February. Employment in transportation and warehousing rose by 74,000 in the month of September. Within the industry, job gains continued in warehousing and storage, up 32,000, transit and ground passenger transportation up 21,000, and couriers and messengers up 10,000. Although the industry has added 291,000 jobs since May, employment in transportation and warehousing is 304,000 lower than in February. What's this trend, too, that we want to pay attention to is how more productive some of these firms might be experiencing because they have fewer people. So are these businesses going to learn to do the same amount of work or to do perhaps even more work with fewer people? Or is it just simply there's not that demand, so we don't need them? Either way, that is a structural issue for the employment picture at large. And this is going to take time to sort itself out. Again, because of all of the distortionary effects that are taking place due to fiscal and monetary policies. Manufacturing added 66,000 jobs over the month. Durable goods accounted for about two-thirds of that gain, led by motor vehicles and parts, up 14,000, and machinery also gaining 14,000. Despite gains over the past 5 months, employment in manufacturing is 647,000 below February's level. Financial activities added 37,000 jobs in September. Job growth occurred in real estate and rental and leasing, up 20,000, and in finance and insurance, gaining 16,000. Employment in financial activities is 162,000 below the level in February. In September, the other services industry added 36,000 jobs, largely in membership associations and organizations, up 31,000. Employment in other services is 495,000 lower than in February. Employment in information grew by 27,000 in September, but is down 276,000 since February. Motion picture and sound recording industries accounted for most of that gain in September, gaining 23,000. Construction employment increased by 26,000 in September, with growth in residential specialty trade contractors gaining 16,000 and construction of buildings gaining 12,000. Construction employment is below its February level by 394,000. That was a little bit of a math error in that report, but it's negligible. In September, wholesale trade added 19,000 jobs, with gains in both the durable and non-durable goods components, up 13,000 and 8,000 respectively. Employment in wholesale trade is 312,000 lower than in February. On to government. Government employment declined by 216,000 in the month of September. Employment in local government education and state government education fell by 231,000 and 49,000 respectively. A decrease of 34,000 in federal government was driven by a decline in the number of temporary Census 2020 workers. Partially offsetting these declines, employment in local government, excluding education, rose by 96,000. So this is just painting the picture as to how vital schools are. They play a part in the broader economy. And we've been down this road before. It's like anything else. It's going to the office, the commercial real estate. People aren't in the office. They're not going by Dunkin' Donuts or wherever to get a cup of coffee, to get a bagel, to get a donut, what have you. Not going out to lunch around these places. Not driving. Repairs for the car. Gasoline, the buses. All the mechanics that do work on the buses. Well, if the buses aren't moving, you don't need as many mechanics, yada, yada, yada. You go down the line. So you're starting to see this picture if you haven't seen it already. Employment in private education decreased by 69,000 in September after a gain of similar magnitude in the month of August. Employment in the industry is down by 355,000 since February. Employment changed little in mining in September, only gaining 1,000. Employment in the industry is down 133,000 since a recent peak in January of 2019. About three-fourths of this decline has occurred since February of this year. In the month of September, average hourly earnings for all employees on private non-farm payrolls at $29.47 is little changed, gaining 2 cents. Doesn't everybody have their 2 cents? Average hourly earnings of private sector production and non-supervisory employees were also little changed in September, gaining 1 penny at $24.79. The large employment fluctuations over the past several months, especially in industries with lower paid workers, complicate the analysis of recent trends in average hourly earnings. That's why they should throw in the median amount as well, because the median value gives you right in the middle. 50% are above this wage, 50% are below. The average takes them all up, divides by how many people are in the group, and voila. So you can have these things become skewed, and we have seen that, which is why the BLS is making note of this. The average work week for all employees on private non-farm payrolls rose by 0.1 hour to 34.7 hours in September. In manufacturing, the work week rose by 0.2 hours to 40.2 hours, and overtime decreased by 0.1 hour to 2.9 hours. The average work week for production and non-supervisory employees on private non-farm payrolls rose by 0.1 hour to 34.1. So that's interesting to see that decrease in the amount of overtime. The change in total non-farm payroll employment for July was revised up by 27,000 from 1,734,000 to 1,761,000. And the change for August was revised up by 118,000 from 1,371,000 to 1,489,000. With these revisions, employment in July and August combined was 145,000 more than previously reported. Okie dokie. The employment situation for October is scheduled to be released on Friday, November 6th, 2020 at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Of course, a few days after the presidential election on Tuesday, November 3rd. So there you have it, folks. Another one for the history books. And of course, they put in at the end their basic little disclaimer, the yada, yada, yada. If they counted it the right way, it'd be even this way. And par for the course, we know it. This report was not as good as the market was anticipating. And I don't know if this is just, now, is this the catalyst that is going to get Chuck and Nancy and Mitch and Mnuchin together to spend more money that we don't have? Again, the Democrats are at about $2.2 trillion. The Republicans in the White House are at about $1.6. I mean, are they just going to meet in the middle like we say they're most likely going to at 1.9? The White House and the Republicans get their win because it has a 1 in front of it, 1.9. And the Democrats could say, oh, well, I guess that's kind of close to $2 trillion. And they'll just round up. I mean, what a game this is. What a sickness this is. And we're all paying for it. And do not forget, the airlines are back on bended knee looking for more money. The White House is already talking about, we can give them another $20 billion to save 32,000 jobs, as we discussed on Thursday. That only comes out to $625,000 per job saved. And that's not even for the full year. I mean, it's just going to carry them through for a handful more months, if they're lucky. We gave them $25 billion at the beginning of the year, and it only got us now to here, to the end of September, beginning of October. What's another $20 billion going to give them? Why do we have to bail them out? These are publicly traded companies. Why can't they issue stock? All that fancy stock that they spent the past decade buying back to financially engineer their share price higher so they could pay themselves handsomely. Why don't they issue those shares back? Why don't they issue corporate debt? I mean, my God, with the Nobody Cares Act, the Federal Reserve, with all their emergency policies, hey, they'll buy it up. Why do we have to bail them out? Because that's the game. That's the game. This is the two-party system. Do not vote for it. Do not endorse it. Do not defend it. Do not get offended when somebody criticizes the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. They deserve to be criticized. They have not earned your respect. They have not earned your trust. They have done the exact opposite. Do not vote for these people. Please. Change your registration. Become a libertarian, independent, unaffiliated Mickey Mouse Club. Leave the Republican Party, leave the Democratic Party, because they've left you a long time ago. People can't make the connections. I try to do my best here. We talk about it almost on a daily basis here, trying to draw the connections. It couldn't be any simpler. But people don't want to pay attention to what's right in front of them. They let emotions cloud their judgment. And it's okay to be emotional, but don't let it cloud your judgment. Be objective about it. You can be passionate about what you're thinking. That's emotional. But use your noggin. Use some logic. Use some common sense. Connect the dots. Do some basic math, for God's sake. We give them $20 billion. Oh, it's going to save them $32,000. Well, how much is that per job? Is that what the pilots are making? Is that what the flight attendants are making? Is that what the baggage handlers are making? I don't think so. Where's it going? Basic questions. Nobody wants to ask them. I hope they get asked during the vice presidential debate this week. And if there's going to be, I don't know if there's going to be more presidential debates, depending on how well Donald Trump recovers. I mean, I don't know at this juncture. Are those questions going to be asked? Because we know Chris Wallace didn't ask the structural questions last week during that disaster. They're probably not going to be asked during the next two either, unless somebody stands up at the town hall and presses them. Wouldn't that be nice to see? Wouldn't that be refreshing? But there you have it, folks. Last jobs report before the election. We will, of course, again continue to receive the initial jobless claims report, and we will do so on a weekly basis, typically on Thursday. So, again, I hope you enjoyed your weekend and get ready for another volatile week, I am certain. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Kreitis. Godspeed.